The glass tipped. Red streaked down my blouse like a warning shot. It was warm. Sudden. The table burst into laughter before I even reached for a napkin. "Oh, Mom," Lissa said, grinning as she steadied her arm against my shoulder. "You're always right in the middle of everything." I didn't flinch. I didn't dab at the fabric. I just placed the glass back on the table quietly and let the wine soak through. Across from me, Eileen lifted her flute of champagne. "To building something out of nothing," she said. "Some women understand that." Lissa raised hers. "Some women just show up." The words sat there sharp like bones under skin. Jason cleared his throat. Darren chuckled. Someone passed a breadbasket. I didn't speak. I reached for my bag under the table, pulled it closer. The zipper resisted. A corner of the folder stuck out thin red, half exposed. No one noticed, or pretended not to. I watched the stain on my shirt bloom wider. Lissa leaned in toward Eileen, whispering something about stock options. My son smiled like a man who had chosen peace over memory. My hands stayed in my lap. I stood. Slowly. Pushed the chair in with both hands. It didn't scrape. "I'll take care of this," I said, not to anyone. And no one stopped me. I walked to the kitchen, passing behind Darren's chair. He didn't move. The floor creaked once. The hallway was darker than I remembered. I turned on the light out of habit, then off again. Didn't need it. At the sink, I pulled off my blouse. Cold water, scrubbing with the back of my knuckles. Not a sound, but the tap. I looked down. The stain had set. Fine. I folded the blouse in half, then again, and laid it on the counter. Picked up the towel. Dried my hands. One breath. In through the nose. Out. Even. The folder was still in my bag, resting like a heartbeat. It wasn't time yet, but it was close. I slipped the bag onto my shoulder, straightened my spine. The hallway was still quiet as I walked back out. My seat was taken. I didn't pause. I headed toward the garage. I opened the hall closet to put my bag away, but boxes spilled out before I touched anything. New labels. New handwriting. None of it mine. We made some changes. Lissa called from the living room. Eileen's arriving Thursday, so she'll take the guest room. My guest room. Jason stepped beside her, arms crossed, like he was bracing for a storm no one else felt. "It's temporary, Mom. We'll find you a corner. A corner. Not a room, not a place. Just somewhere to put me." I nodded once and walked toward the hallway. The door to my old room was half shut. I pushed it open with my fingertips. The mattress was covered with folded clothes that weren't mine. Suitcases leaned against the wall. Gift bags from Eileen's favorite boutiques sat in a tower on the dresser. Storage. I stood there until the smell of lavender detergent began to sting. No words came. My hands stayed loose at my sides. My throat tightened anyway. Lissa brushed past me, carrying another plastic bin. "Mom, could you move? I need space for this." I stepped aside. Not slowly, not quickly. Just enough. Jason avoided my eyes. He pointed vaguely toward the back of the house. "We'll set up something cozy for you near the garage. You won't even notice the difference." The difference was a door without a lock. A room without a window. A life being folded into smaller and smaller squares. I walked to the garage doorway. The bulb flickered when I pressed the switch. I pressed it again. And again. My palms stayed on the panel longer than needed, as if pressure alone could steady something inside me. It didn't. The air smelled of dust and motor oil. I could almost hear Daniel's voice telling me where he kept the spare tools, the winter salt, the generator. But this wasn't my house anymore. I released the switch and stepped back. Later, when they were busy with their rearranging, I climbed the folding ladder to the attic. Quiet space. Quiet air. I set down a small box in the far corner, plain. Cardboard, hand-labeled years ago. Litchfield Trust Docs. Nothing else. I closed the lid gently as if sealing something alive. Night came without anyone asking where I'd sleep. I pulled a blanket from the hall closet and stretched out on the couch, facing the back of the house, listening to the settling of walls that no longer held my name. The lights dimmed. The rooms stayed full. I lay still, waiting for morning to show me what else they'd emptied. I stopped when I heard my name. "She's sweet," Lissa said. "Mom helps with groceries and little things." But the real push came from Eileen. She believed in us. They were in the kitchen. I stood just beyond the doorway. Jason didn't correct her. He just nodded like it was true. Groceries. I walked back to the pantry, closed the door softly behind me, pulled the folding stool forward, and sat. The light overhead buzzed dim but steady. I reached for the plastic folder I'd tucked behind the oatmeal box, pulled out the stack. Receipts, printed statements, old notes in pen. I started folding them, one by one, lined them up by date, then by amount. There it was, wire transfer, $45,000, memo. Litchfield LLC Startup Legal Retainer. Keller and Ames. My handwriting on the original form. My signature. Their idea. Jason had come to me at the end of winter last year. Said they were starting small. Said it wouldn't take much. Just a little help for a few months. I'd nodded, walked to the bank and signed. No questions. No promises. Just trust. I kept folding. $3,200. Lissa's MBA application. $8,500. Jason's car repair after the hailstorm, $2,000. Apartment deposit, first year of marriage, $12,400. Hospital copay when Darren broke his wrist and refused to file insurance groceries. I kept folding until my fingers slowed. My eyes stung. I set the papers down, aligned the corners. Not anger, not sadness. Just a feeling like dust settling. Something old, something still. I reached for the manila envelope. Wrote the month on the tab, slipped the documents inside gently. No creases. I stood, walked back to the desk near the garage. Plugged in the small printer, printed 2 more months. Sat back down and added them. The envelope grew heavier. They were still laughing in the kitchen when I shut the pantry door behind me. Eileen's name came up again. A toast. Someone opened champagne. I walked to my bag, unzipped the middle pocket, and tucked the envelope inside. It fit perfectly. The lights stayed on. Their voices echoed. I returned to the couch, picked up my planner, and flipped to the next blank page. I carried the tray with both hands. Small bites. Too many garnishes. Lissa said the caterer canceled last minute. "Could you just handle this part, Mom?" she asked already, walking away. So I did. Guests circled tall tables, all glass and linen. I moved through the crowd without a name tag, without a seat. They smiled without seeing. "This is lovely," one woman said. Lifting a canapé. "Is she with the staff?" Another shrugged. "I think she's the help. Maybe family. Hard to tell." I didn't correct them, just nodded and moved on. At the far end, Lissa posed beside Eileen. Jason took the photo, then another, then one more with a wine glass raised. "Cheers to the woman who did it all alone," Lissa announced. To reinvention at 68, applause followed. Light practiced. I stepped behind the curtain near the side door, watched as my daughter leaned in and kissed Eileen's cheek. They laughed together, shoulder to shoulder. My hand shook. Just once. I gripped the tray tighter, held it still. On the table beside me, a stack of handouts rested next to the guest book. Rebrand proposal, Everett Wellness and Retreats. My old office logo flashed at the top, slightly altered. Near the bottom of the page, in fine print, drafted in consultation with M. Litchfield. My signature, not removed, just ignored. I picked up a folded napkin, wiped the edge of the tray, and walked back into the room. "Just leave them on the side." "Thanks, Mom," Lissa said, pointing to a table near the hallway. I placed the tray down, adjusted the angle, made sure nothing tipped, then moved to the next table, repeated it again and again. No one looked up. No one asked why I wasn't sitting. No one noticed there was no chair set for me. I adjusted the final plate, then turned toward the back hallway. The exit door stuck a little before it gave. I didn't look back, just stepped out, closed it behind me, and breathed against the night air. The tray was still in my hands. I set it down gently on the porch table, then pulled out my phone and opened the photo of the signature I'd taken earlier. I laid the stack of papers on the counter. The clerk blinked. Once. Then leaned closer, scanning the headings. Authorizations. Transfers. Trust schedules. Old signatures that still held weight. You want all these notarized? She asked. Just the ones with her name on them, I said. She flipped through the pages. Her fingers slowed when she reached the trust document. There are a lot of attachments here. I know. She pointed to one section. This clause. Do you still want it included? Clause 14. I'd forgotten the number, but not the meaning. Reversion of full ownership in the event of breach, including misuse of funds or unauthorized representation. All startup shares, every percentage point they thought was already theirs, would return to me if they violated the terms. They had violated them months ago. Yes, I said. Stamp everything attached to that page. The clerk nodded, pulled the first document forward, and positioned it under the notary seal. I took off my glasses, set them beside the counter, watched the stamp rise, hover, then drop with a firm click. The second document followed, then the third. Each one marked, dated, sealed. The clerk worked carefully, almost reverently, though she didn't understand what she was sealing shut. When she finished, she slid the stack toward me. Do you want this in an envelope? A locked one? She produced a heavy paper envelope with a clasp, tucked the documents inside, and secured the metal arm through the reinforced slit. I pressed it down until it lay flat. She offered me a marker. I wrote 4 words on the front without pausing. To be opened if disrespected. The ink bled slightly into the paper. I let it dry. Anything else today, Mrs. Litchfield? No. This is enough. I placed the envelope in my bag, close to the seam, where the weight settled against my hip. Outside, the sun hit the pavement. Warm, steady. I walked slowly to the car, feeling the shift inside the bag with every step. The door shut quietly when I got in. I rested the envelope on the passenger seat and ran my hand over its edge. Not triumph, not spite, just a quiet, simple certainty. I started the engine, pulled out of the lot, and drove toward the house that no longer had a place for me. I opened the folder and spread the lease across the table. Lissa handed me a pen, grinning. Just a formality, Mom. You know we'll handle everything. Darren slid his phone across the table. Let's get a picture of the moment. New beginnings and all that. I nodded, smiled. Let the corners of my mouth stretch just enough for the flash. But I didn't let go of the folder. My left hand held it like something alive. Jason wasn't home. Eileen had gone out to tour the warehouse they were eyeing. Just the 3 of us in the kitchen. I traced the lease with my finger page by page, line by line. Darren shifted. Lissa rolled her eyes. She wants to play lawyer again. I just like to be sure I said. I took photos of every page. Quiet clicks. Zoomed in on initials. Dates. Rent guarantees. My name listed as guarantor. They watched me but didn't stop me. I reached the last page. Mind if I mark a small X next to my initials for clarity? Lissa shrugged. Whatever makes you comfortable. I signed. Then placed the X beside it. Bottom right corner. Tiny. Out of view unless you knew to look. Same as the other documents. Darren clapped his hands. Done. Thank you, Mara. Lissa kissed my cheek light and fast. You've always been good at backing us up. I gathered the lease, slid it into a clear sleeve, and tucked it back in my folder. Darren asked for one copy. I gave it to him, after I'd photographed it. They returned to their laptops, chatting about new furniture and launch deadlines. I stood, nodded once, and carried my things back to the couch. Once alone, I unzipped the side pocket of my bag, pulled out the flash drive, and loaded the photos. Every page, every mark, every slip of their confidence. I titled the folder Litchfield. Secondary agreements, zipped it, and opened my inbox. To Mr. Faraday Law Group NC.com. Subject shadow record attachment lease, shot photo set. Zip, I hit send. Watch the progress bar crawl forward. The envelope still sat in my bag, unopened, untouched. By the time I shut the laptop, the house was quiet again. I poured coffee, leaned back, and let the mug rest in my hand. Eileen stood in the doorway with folded arms. She didn't knock. You've done nothing for that girl, she said. Lissa needs someone who actually shows up. I didn't move. The towel in my hands stayed half folded. She's rebuilding everything Eileen went on. You're lucky to witness it. Jason stood behind her, eyes lowered. He didn't speak. Didn't meet mine. Lissa stepped in next. She tossed a card onto the counter, my old grocery stipend card. We're fine now, she said. Don't worry about errands or gas. We've got it handled. I picked up the card. Didn't check the balance. Just slid it into my pocket. They left without waiting for a response. That night, I logged into the credit union site, clicked through tabs, closed the joint household account with 2 passwords and a final confirmation code sent to my phone. Quiet clicks. Quiet end. The funds shifted into the Litchfield trust account. Balance confirmed. Notifications silenced. I turned off the lamp and walked to the corner space behind the kitchen. My room now, a folding cot, 1 suitcase, a coat draped over the back of a dining chair. I turned the deadbolt. It stuck halfway. I pressed harder until it clicked into place. Sat down. No coffee. The mug was clean, untouched on the shelf. I hadn't brewed any today. My hand brushed the side of the ceramic. The Litchfield crest. My father-in-law's old farm brand. A tree split by lightning, but still standing. They used it in the startup logo. Called it Legacy. I stood and moved to the window, barely a foot wide, overlooking the yard. The night was still. Just fence posts and porch light shadows. I placed the mug on the sill. Turned it outward. Let the symbol face them. No words. No gestures. Just that quiet tree, broken but rooted. Behind me, the house creaked. A drawer opened. Laughter somewhere down the hall. I sat again. Back straight, hands resting on my knees. Nothing to fold. Nothing left to return. The deadbolt held, and for once the silence didn't feel empty. I stood in the back behind the flower arrangements and photo boards. The lights dimmed. Music faded. Lissa took the mic with both hands, voice sweetened by applause. We wouldn't be here without vision, she said, and we wouldn't have vision without my mother-in-law. Eileen inspired it all. It's her legacy. People clapped. Jason smiled wide. Eileen dabbed her eye with a linen napkin like she'd practiced it. I stepped forward. The tray of champagne passed. I didn't take one. Just walked toward the front, steady, silent. Lissa's voice kept going, but her eyes tracked me now. I reached the main table beside the framed mission statement, pulled the red folder from my bag. No rustling, no words, just paper. I opened it. 1 sheet. Printed, notarized, stamped. Litchfield Trust, Clause 14 reversion. Full ownership reinstated to Mara Litchfield upon breach of financial terms, effective 3 days ago. Filed. Verified. I placed the paper at the center of the table, right beside the plaque bearing Eileen's name. Someone near the front tilted their head. I picked up a napkin, folded in half, then again, wiped the rim of an untouched wine glass, set it down. My fingers didn't tremble. The lights didn't flicker. The room didn't gasp. But something shifted, low and slow, the kind of silence that drips instead of drops. Eileen stood frozen. Lissa leaned forward like she might say something, but didn't. Jason's hand went to his tie, then dropped again. I turned, walked through the gap in the crowd, stepped past the catered trays, the photographers, the branded coasters with the Litchfield tree. No one stopped me. Outside, the air hit colder than expected. I zipped my coat, reached into my pocket, and felt the second copy of the form, the one with the seal that hadn't been shown yet. It stayed there. I kept walking, down the steps, toward the car, waiting just past the valet where no one had ever asked who paid for the driver. Behind me, the party didn't cheer, didn't resume. It paused, and somewhere between their applause and the next scheduled speech, I heard the weight of a room realizing who the house had really been built for. Jason pounded on the door like he was afraid it might disappear if he hesitated. I opened it halfway. He stood there with the revoked lease crushed in his fist, the pages wrinkled and stamped in red. They said I should have known, he blurted. No greeting, no breath. Mara, Mom. They said I should have known what was in those terms, that it was my responsibility to understand what I signed. I stepped aside, just enough for him to enter. He didn't move until I turned my back and walked to the kitchen. The house was small, 2 rooms, quiet, sunlit, through thin curtains. Not one item from their home sat inside it. My things. Only mine. Jason finally came in shoulders, tight, face pale. He shut the door behind him. Why didn't you say anything? He asked. I didn't answer. I reached for the coffee pot on the stove, pointed to it with a nod. He didn't approach. His arms hung loose at his sides, the papers slipping slightly from his grip. I poured myself a cup. Steam rose. The handle warmed my hand. I lifted it to my lips and tasted the first sip before turning toward him. You made me look like a fool, he said quietly. Not angry. Just tired. They're saying I never should have let Lissa handle the finances. They're saying I ignored the warnings. I set the mug on the counter, untouched now. He started, then stopped. His jaw worked. Why didn't you tell me? Silence from my end. Not sharp, not cruel, just steady. His eyes drifted around the room. Stopped on the fridge. On the faded post-it he used to tease me about, never fund silence. He swallowed. Once. Hard. Is that what this is? He asked, voice cracking. You stopped funding us because we stopped hearing you. Still no answer. Some truths weren't meant to be spoken. They were meant to be lived with. He ran a hand through his hair. Looked older than his age, smaller somehow. I don't know how to fix this. I picked up my mug again. Took another sip. Didn't offer comfort. He nodded slowly, understanding more in what I didn't say than in anything I ever had. When he stepped out, I followed him to the doorway. The afternoon light cut across his face as he turned away. I closed the door. Slowly, one hinge at a time. The latch clicked firm. The house went still again. I ground the beans by hand. Slow, steady turns. The sound filled the kitchen, my kitchen soft and coarse at once. No footsteps upstairs. No chair scraping back. No one calling for me through a half-laughed request. I boiled the water, poured it slow. The ceramic mug sat waiting. Cream-colored chipped at the rim. Lissa once called it outdated and tried to toss it during a kitchen purge. I took it back from the donation box, washed it twice, kept it quiet. Steam rose in a ribbon. I watched it curl, then fade. I lifted the cup. No spill. My hand held. My wrist didn't tremble. Not even a blink of doubt. The first sip warmed everything. No rush, just presence. Outside, the sky stayed gray. Inside, the light was mine. I didn't fill the second mug. Didn't set out extra napkins. No one else was coming. And that wasn't lonely. It was honest. I sat by the window. The folder rested beside me. Red seal unbroken. The label written weeks ago in calm, thin strokes. Only if they knock. It stayed closed. I didn't reach for it. I didn't need to. The street was quiet. No engines, no footsteps. I looked down at the coffee again. Took another sip. Felt the weight of it settle into my chest, not heavy, just real, just mine. The house creaked once like it was shifting into place around me. I leaned back in the chair. Let the silence fill what used to be asked of me. And this time, it asked for nothing.